Welcome back to Let's Play Board Game Edition. Hello, I'm your host Mark Ion, and this week I have the honor of giving an advanced review of Tasty Minstrel Games' newest edition, Flip City. In this video, I will be covering the rules. There will also be a separate video that is my review, and then a gameplay video as well. So let's get into the rules. Flip City is a deck-building, press-your-luck game, which is quite different than traditional deck-building games. The first thing I noticed is that there was no backs to any of the cards. Instead, all the cards are double-sided. Next, players do not draw a hand of cards to play from. Instead, they play directly from the top of their deck. The press-your-luck aspect comes in from potentially turn-ending cards that must be played if they're on the top of your deck. There are 6 different types of double-sided cards in the game. There's the residential area apartment cards, the convenience store shopping mall card, the office trade center card, the hospital church card, factory power plant card, and the Central Park station card. First, everyone creates their starting deck by taking 4 residential areas, 1 convenience store, 1 hospital, 1 factory, 1 Central Park, and 1 apartment, and shuffles them together, making sure that they do not flip the cards over. The front of each card has a cost to buy in the upper right corner. So the convenience store costs 2, the factory costs 5, and the Central Park costs 7 to buy. Now, at the bottom of the front of each card, there's a coin cost and an arrow pointing upward. This is the price to upgrade the card, or flip it over so you can use the other side. The symbols on the bottom left are what the card supplies. So the convenience store gives you 1 gold, the factory gives you 2 gold, and the Central Park gives you 2 victory points. And at the very bottom of the card is a box that has an ability. Some abilities are activated, while others are passive. Now, on the back side of the card, you have no cost, because you can't buy any flipped over without paying the upgrade fee. They do have abilities and provide stuff, but they have a green arrow facing downwards. And this is what you get if you recycle the card, meaning you flip it back over to the front side. So if you recycle the shopping mall, you'd get a gold. You can recycle the power plant to put the factory back on the top of your deck, and the station will give you 1 victory point if you recycle it. You can only use the recycle ability if the card is in your discard pile. So once everyone has their deck set up, you set up the buy stacks. This is made up of 12 convenience stores, 12 hospitals, 8 factories, 8 Central Parks, and if you choose to use them, 10 office cards. Now, this is also noted at the bottom of the right side of each card, a little big 12, little 12, 12, 8, 8, and 10. So it helps you remember that. So once the stacks are set up, you can decide who goes first in any way you choose, and each player takes turn clockwise, playing cards from the top of their deck. The game is made up of 3 phases. First is the play card phase. The player whose turn it is plays cards from the top of their deck one by one until either they decide to stop playing cards or they have 3 unhappy face symbols on the cards they have played. If they decide to stop, then they immediately move on to phase 2. But if they have 3 unhappy face symbols on their cards, their turn ends immediately, and they skip to the next person's turn. If a player runs out of cards in their deck, the player can decide to end their play phase, or they can decide to shuffle their deck. And once they shuffle their deck, they again have the option whether or not they want to play or continue or stop. Unless the top card requires them to keep playing, of course. For example, this player has an apartment on the top of his deck, so he's going to play it. So he gains 1 unhappy face and 1 gold. He sees he has a factory next. He decides, I'm also going to play that, so he's going to play that. The factory has an ability, if your deck is not empty, place the bottom card of your deck into your discard pile. So he's going to lift that up. He's going to put that into his discard pile down here. Now, he has a residential area on the top of his deck. And it says here, when a residential area is the top card of your deck, you must play it. So he's going to play it, because he has to. So now he has 2 unhappy faces and 4 gold. he has a central park on the top of his deck. Now, he knows that there are more residential areas still in his deck, so he's going to decide, well, I like where I am now, and I'm just going to use my 4 gold because I don't want my turn to end and to miss out. So he ends his turn. He gets to move on to phase 2. One thing you always have to remember is that just because a card is in your discard pile doesn't mean that's necessarily out of play. In this situation here, the player has a residential area, which has an unhappiness. We have a hospital that also has an unhappiness, and a convenience store. Now, they have a residential area at the top of their deck, which they'll have to play, and it will give them the 3rd unhappiness, causing them to bust. But they have a power plant in their discard pile, which has the ability to recycle it and put the card on the top of your deck. So they can use that ability, flip it over, and put it on top, and now they no longer have a residential area they have to play, and they can continue on and take their turn and move on to phase 2. They also have a church in their discard pile, so instead they could recycle their church and increase their limit of unhappiness by 1. So now they can have 3 unhappiness and be safe, play their residential area, and they're still okay, and they can also move on to phase 2. During phase 2, the player has to choose one of 3 options. They can buy, which means they can pay the buy cost for a card and put it into their discard pile. They can flip, which is they can pay the upgrade cost of one of the cards in their discard pile. It must be in their discard pile, not in play. And they can flip it over and have it be the other side in their deck now, in their discard pile now. Or they can develop. And to develop, they pay both the cost as well as the upgrade cost of a card, and they can take it and flip it and put it face down into their discard pile. Players only get 1 action during this phase unless cards they played say otherwise. The last phase, phase 3, is end of the turn / cleanup. The player takes all the cards they've played this turn and places them face up into their discard pile, making sure that none of the cards get flipped in the process. Then the player to their left starts their turn. The first player to play cards with 8 victory points on them all in 1 turn wins. If a player gets 8 victory points and the limit of unhappy faces at the same time, their turn ends before they win. For example, this player here has 2 victory points, 1 unhappy face, 2 more victory points, so that's 4, 3 more victory points, so that's 7, 1 here, that makes 8, and another 2 here, which makes 10. So they have reached 8 or more victory points, so they win the game. On the other hand, if they had a residential area and an apartment, and they had 3 unhappy faces, and they had gone that far, they would not win the game. They'd put the cards into their discard pile, and then the next player would complete their turn. Well, that's it for the rules. I hope you continue onward to watch my review, as well as the playthrough. Also, always remember to share, like, and subscribe, and if I don't see you in the other videos, remember to stay geeky.